If Star Citizen patch 324 is badged up as the Cargo Empires patch, then what better way to experience it than with a large hauler like the Hercules, coupled with a new ATLS cargo loader to keep loading and unload times to a minimum. I'm Forrester, and this gameplay video covers a few different trips in the Herc, chaining together multiple hauling contracts. Some of the footage of what would otherwise have been a 2-hour session has been sped up to keep the overall length of this video down, and those parts are clearly marked as such, but otherwise this is a real-time view of cargo hauling. And this is intended to be a gameplay video rather than a guide, although there is a cargo tutorial available on the channel if that's what you were hoping for. So, without further ado, let's get started. And the first step is spawning in the ship in the extra large hangar and picking up all of the different contracts. In this case, I'm starting out at New Babbage, so what I'm doing is I'm picking basically any contracts that involve taking cargo up to Port Tressler, any contracts that involve moving cargo between Port Tressler, Mike L1 and Mike L2. That keeps everything relatively constrained within the planetary body. The contracts are generally quite easy to find, and it means that it's easier to manage what's going where. Then hopping in to the new ATLS and enjoying the startup. Fantastic. So next step is to board the ATLS aboard the back of the Herc M2 and then start hauling. I'm not entirely sure why this ATLS is in my hangar, incidentally. I have had a look and definitely not a subscriber, and I haven't secretly bought one. It was just in my hangar one day when I got up, so I wonder if perhaps it's a loaner for a ship that I'm waiting for. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm not going to complain about having an ATLS that I can't explain. So it's been an enjoyable experience to at least get the opportunity to use that. Usually I would wait until it is available for Alpha UEC before picking one up, but for reasons unknown I have access to one slightly early. So at this point, moving all of the cargo onto the freight elevator, there's very little management for me to do here because essentially anything that is coming up the elevator needs to go up to Port Tressler, so I don't even need to worry about organising my cargo. I just need to load it on the ship and get it up to Port Tressler. Enjoying that startup sequence for the ATLS once again. Get the cargo loaded aboard. So the ATLS can be a bit awkward to use when you've got these larger boxes, but I find that having a Tobii eye tracker hugely helps, because rather than having to work out where to place the box, you can kind of look off to the side, and then the box that would otherwise be blocking your view is no longer blocking your view. So this has definitely been a use case where I'm very grateful to have the eye tracker. Just takes a little bit of getting used to be moving the mouse and your eyes at the same time, but after an hour or so of doing this, it becomes kind of second nature. There we are, getting the next boxes loaded up. So fear not if you are nervous that this gameplay video is going to be just loading boxes. It isn't. I wanted to load a few just so that you could see what that element of gameplay looks like in patch 324 and share some thoughts on the ATLS. But also, I know that you don't want to watch me load up the whole Herc however many times, so I will speed up the footage shortly so you can get a flavour for how it works, as well as the amount of time it takes. So here we are into that times 12 speed. So I have heard people call the ATLS the Atlas. It does make sense as a kind of name for the ship. It's probably like the false inspiration behind the name, but I can't bring myself to call it the Atlas. It's like, it's an Argo, and I feel like most of the Argo stuff, you know, the raft or the mole or the MPUV, I don't know, it feels very industrial. And Atlas for me is kind of like old Greek, classical rather than industrial, so I'm going to stick with ATLS. I don't begrudge anyone that wants to call it the Atlas, but I don't know, ATLS feels right. So that's all of the cargo loaded down on the bottom deck, heading up to the top deck of the Herc. And hop into the pilot's chair. So you can see here from the position in the hangar, one of the first things I did when I spawned in the Herc was just reversed up to the freight elevator. This is obviously an extra large hangar on New Babbage, and that means that there's plenty of room for moving a Hercules around inside, and just by moving all the way up to the cargo freight elevator, it just gives you a little bit more room for loading the cargo. But there we are, the doors are open. Strafe up into a beautiful microtech scene. This is why I live in New Babbage. Absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Nice external view there. So the next phase is going to be heading up to Port Tressler to unload all of this cargo. And I have 11 different cargo hauling contracts at this point. Some of them involve heading up to Port Tressler, some of them involve moving things from Port Tressler to New Babbage, some of them involve moving things from Michael 1 and Michael 2 between them and Port Tressler. So there's a good variety in there that will involve me travelling to a few different places. There we are. A lovely view of New Babbage on Microtech with the Crusader Industries M2 Hercules. Have talked before on the channel about why I opted for the M2 versus the C2, and purely it's on future proofing and crew count. So the C2 Herc is, I think probably it's fair to say it's better in the game at the moment, just there's more cargo storage aboard, and the name of the game right now seems to be maximizing that cargo storage capacity. But in the future, the M2 might have some alternative advantages, so things like potentially maybe better armor. We don't know ultimately, but what we do know is that the M2 has a third seat in the cockpit, and that was the reason that I opted for the M2. I've got small haulers that are kind of like single seat. I've got some dual seat options. What I didn't have was a 3-seater, and that's why I've chosen the M2. Whether that turns out to be a good decision or a bad decision, only time will tell. So here we are in Port Tressler. Got our hangar, and I've tried to park so that the cargo bay is facing the freight elevator. This is one of the other advantages of the Hercules series, is that there's a door at the front and a door at the back, so you can either reverse up to a freight elevator or you can drive forward to face a freight elevator. And it's kind of got, for vehicles, that gives it roll off and roll on functionality that doesn't really exist in some of the other cargo haulers. As you can see, the ATLS is a natural fit in the cargo bay. We're barely scraping the surface of what this ship can carry, of course. And there is plenty of room at the side to be able to squeeze the ATLS past. And then it's just going to be a case of unloading everything. So one of the things that takes a little bit of getting used to is positioning the ATLS, just because it basically just grabs hold of the box or chucks the box where you want to chuck it, and it largely ignores things that are in the way, which if there are things in the way, can make things a little bit more difficult, a little bit more challenging. So you end up learning to position yourself slightly differently, but being able to stand in one spot and load and unload the entire ship is a huge advantage versus doing it with the handheld tractor beams where you're literally running in and running out. The ATLS significantly reduces the time spent. So we've got a few contracts here that we've completed by delivering those goodies down to the warehouse. There we are, contracts completed. And so one of the next steps is going to be moving some of the other freight that needs moving to Mike L1 and Mike L2 up. One of the really easy ways for me to be differentiating between the cargo, you could keep notes, you could check the mission, but for this I know that anything that says planetary is just going to be to New Babbage, because I've only taken contracts to New Babbage, and anything that says solar is going to involve me going to Mike L1 or Mike L2, because those are the contracts that I've accepted. So I've left the ones that say planetary in the warehouse, and that's purely because I know I'm coming back to Port Tressler with some cargo. So by leaving it in the warehouse, I'm not confusing my cargo grid with other cargo. I keep things a little bit simple. And then I'll just go through and just double check my missions for exactly what is going to Mike L1 and exactly what is going to Mike L2. If you are stringing together multiple contracts like this, it's worth having some kind of a system, just so that you're optimized. In theory, what you could do is kind of load it all, send some down, bring it back up and things like that, but you're obviously wasting time unloading and loading cargo, so the most efficient option is to have a system of some description. Incidentally, since the ATLS is a ground vehicle, I tend not to do full reviews of ground vehicles, partly because they're so expensive for what you get, and partly because you don't get as much as you get with a ship. My view on the ATLS is I think it's great as a cargo loader unloader, a mobile tractor beam. I did expect it to be quite expensive to buy for cash, and I'm not wrong. I'm hoping that whenever we get an Alpha UEC price, it'll be fairly reasonably priced. Most of the other ground vehicles are like 100,000 or 200,000 Alpha UEC, and for that money, I think you'd pick up a few to have them in different hangars. But that would be for Alpha UEC rather than as a cash purchase. For me personally, I don't begrudge the people that do want to pay cash for an ATLS. They do make a huge difference to moving cargo around. Speaking of moving cargo around, what I'm doing now is just organising the cargo on the hold into what needs to go to Mike L1 and what needs to go to Mike L2. So I've basically got one side of the ship I know I'm delivering to Mike L1, the other side of the ship I know is going to Mike L2, and that's just going to speed things up a little bit when I come in to actually do the deliveries, because I know what I need to load and unload at each location. So we'll start with Mike L2's contracts. Now I have got one contract that involves delivering to both Mike L1 and Mike L2. There's some food, some processed food, and I think some pressurized ice. So I was just looking at how many SCUs need to go to each and putting that on my little notepad so that I know exactly what I am to deliver. This is another neat feature about the M2, well, the entire Hercules series really. It has a VTOL mode which just closes the end of the wingtips in, which just makes it a little narrower for fitting into tight spaces. This is quite a rare view on the channel, actually flying in third person mode. You usually only use this for getting some nice screenshots or some nice footage. but trying to reverse in such a way that the rear of the ship is perfectly placed for the freight elevator, I'm not yet that. I'm also not very well landed there. We'll get there. This is probably why you don't see me flying in third person very much. It just feels very clumsy compared to first person flying. I don't begrudge anybody who flies in third person, by the way. I think everybody should play this game the way that works for them. But for me personally, I like the first person view, and when you can fly in normally, that's what I will do. I'm sure I will get there with where these freight elevators are and working out exactly where I need to park each ship to be optimally placed for it, but I'm not there yet. So here we are with the ATLS unloading the cargo at the rear, but leaving the cargo that needs to go to Mike L1. So I've only got the relevant cargo that's getting unloaded to the freight elevator. There we are, close the door. And then back up top to head to Mike L1. Sometimes the ladder on the Hercules gets a bit sticky. It's not the smoothest experience every single time, so what you're watching is somebody who makes YouTube videos trying to climb a ladder. But we're back in the cockpit, and we'll get ready to move to our next location. So it's worth adding at this point that the cargo missions, the hauling missions that you get given, are based on reputation, and as much as I've done some cargo hauling, my reputation is slowly going up, so I don't yet have the top tier of contracts. So what you're seeing is junior level and rookie level contracts. The further up you go, the better the missions get. So what you're seeing is essentially low end of the cargo hauling spectrum, but with a Hercules and an ATLS, it's very quick to load any number of boxes. So despite being at the low end, I'm overcoming that by using big hardware and also by essentially taking multiple contracts at the same time. So I think when we started out, there were 11 contracts that were accepted, so that gives a flavour for just the scale that trying to operate here for the cargo hauling. As we head into Mike L1 to get rid of the next bit of cargo. It's probably also worth adding that one of the differentiators between cargo hauling and cargo trading is this is incredibly low risk for me as the cargo hauler. So if all of this cargo gets lost, or I mess it up, or the ship explodes, or a pirate attacks, really I've lost nothing on my bottom line. I'll have to reclaim the ship and any equipment that I had on it or on my person, but the cargo itself is not my problem, which sounds awful to say, but actually when you think about a ship like the Hercules, which has 500 plus SCUs of cargo storage capacity, if you paid for that cargo, you're potentially talking hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Alpha UEC's worth of cargo that is at risk when you're trading. Whereas when you're doing this cargo hauling, you get similar mechanics of loading and unloading cargo, you get similar mechanics of traveling to different destinations, but you don't have the risk. So the payouts are a bit lower, but the risks are also much lower. Transfer the cargo to the warehouse, and then load up the remaining cargo. And this is all to go to Port Tressler, so that keeps things simple. And then love the profile of just seeing the ATLS suit just waiting at the top of the ramp for me. Really enjoy that startup sequence of the suit. It's the same for a few of the ships in the game. The Gladius has it, for example, and I really like seeing it. I know it does add time to getting in or out and starting up ships, or starting up the ATLS in this case, but it looks good though. It does look good. And there we go, that box has now flown underneath the Hercules, and that's what I was talking about earlier in terms of positioning and being in the right position at the right time. If you're not, it'll just chuck the box wherever, and that's what happened there. It's now underneath the M2 and I'll have to go and rescue it shortly. I'm very grateful for times 12 speed in the edit here. Even with the ATLS, when you've got a lot of crates, and in this case there are lots of single 1 SCU crates, it does still take a fair amount of time to load and unload cargo. Now, if I'm in the mood for it, I still quite enjoy that. I know some people have said it's very, very tedious to have to do, and I can see that. But also, I'm the sort of person that, if I'm in the right sort of mood for it, does find that quite satisfying, you know, stacking the boxes. So, personally, I don't mind it too much. I think the other nice thing about Star Citizen is you can do so many different things that if you're not in the mood for loading boxes, if you just want to go and blast away and blast some stuff, then you can do that too. So at this point, what I'm doing, I know we accepted 11 contracts before. I'm just having a look down the list and seeing, are there any other contracts that I could accept? I know I'm going to be flying from Port Tressler back down to New Babbage Interstellar Spaceport. I've got a couple of contracts there already, but I'm just seeing, is there anything else that I could take that I can also stack up and chain together for that trip? So I'm just specifically looking for anything that goes from Port Tressler to New Babbage Interstellar Spaceport, like this contract that I've just accepted. And this is purely because I'm still at this kind of junior rank or rookie rank missions. I thought it'd be helpful just to have a quick look and see, try and do as many of these contracts at the same time as possible. There we are, coming to land at Port Tressler, up down the ladder, ATLS, unload the last of the cargo, and again it's those single SCU crates that just take a little bit of time to stack up, which gives, I suppose, gives a clear reason why you'd want to move on to the larger contracts with the larger crates, but you have to get there first. And then getting all the crates organised in times 12 speed, living the dream. Plenty of boxes to go down to New Babbage. I like the idea as the long-term kind of future for this kind of gameplay in future is that essentially you've got two different types of hauling contracts, and you can kind of see it in the description that are on the hauling contracts at the moment anyway, between, you know, like planetary or solar, but I like the idea that you've got the smaller, more nimble cargo haulers that move stuff from space stations to the planet side or to different outposts on the planet, and then you've got the huge interplanetary type haulers like the Hull C and things like that that would then do their move over longer distances, so they take longer in the loading or unloading, so you'd want to be doing fewer hops, so you'd want to cover more distance in them. I don't know where the Hercules would sit in that analogy. It's probably a good planetary hauler, actually. And of course, well designed for ground vehicle movement. You can see why New Babbage is my home. Absolutely beautiful. It'll spin around as we wait for the hangar to be assigned. There it is, that's my hangar bay. This is much easier to know where to fly to for the freight elevator. And again, helped by that Hercules having the ramps on the front and on the back. And this is the last cargo hop, so right now it's just a case of unloading all of the cargo into New Babbage, and then it's mission complete. And actually there's so much cargo here, I probably should have spent a little bit longer organising the freight elevator, lest I run out of room. But you can see the ATLS makes it so much easier than doing it manually with the tractor beam. The ATLS is, for ships that don't have an inbuilt tractor beam especially, it really is a game changer. I'll be very, very interested and excited to see when it's available for Alpha UEC purchase in the game. I don't know when that will be. From previous patches, it seems to take anywhere between 6 and 12 months for vehicles to enter into that phase, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And there we go. Last crate, up and aboard onto the freight elevator. We'll send them down to complete the last of our contracts. So that's been a range of different hauling contracts. This gameplay session took about 2 hours and made 206,500 Alpha UEC. So that's about 100k an hour. It is worth adding that's at junior grade with junior and rookie rank missions, so it's not the end game, but there was no real risk attached. If you enjoyed this video, you might press the like button to let me know I should make more similar videos, and if you're not yet subscribed, given that you got this far, you probably want to do that too, so that YouTube will know to show you more videos like this in future. But otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.